Due to the nature of professional wrestling, injuries are bound to happen. Throughout pro wrestling history, there have been a number of injuries which have ultimately resulted in a wrestler's career ending. More often than not, this injury comes about from a complete accident and the wrestler holds no ill will on the opponent who may have just ended their career. However, there are also times where a wrestler may turn extremely bitter and extensively blame the opponent for ending their career. But which wrestlers ended a career? Well, join us now as Wrestlelamia looks at 10 wrestlers who ended the career of their opponent. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists. Number 10. Sasha Banks ends Paige's career. Wrestling injuries can occur anytime, and sometimes it's the most basic of moves that causes the most damage. This was certainly the case when Paige suffered a career-ending injury in 2017. During a 6-women tag match at a house show, Paige would suffer a kick to the back and suffered an immediate injury, falling to the ground and grabbing her neck in the process. The match would be stopped immediately, and unfortunately, Paige would never wrestle again. Paige would reveal in a 2018 interview with Give Me Sport that she has no harsh feelings towards Sasha and revealed, "Nothing was ever Sasha's fault. She got so much backlash, and even in the ring when we were there, people are chanting Sasha sucks, and it really upset me to hear that because it wasn't her fault." The thing is with me, right, that move where she kicks me in the back, I had taken that so many times previously that I was so stubborn and I thought I can still do these kind of things, and I thought my neck was just as strong as it was before, but unfortunately it's not. So I called this move and I told her to do it, and so she did it, and unfortunately my neck wasn't strong enough and it snapped all the way back, and it was essentially the same thing as having a really bad car crash. Number 9. D'Lo Brown ends the career of Droz. During a SmackDown taping in 1999, a freak accident resulted in Droz suffering a career-ending injury. In the match, Droz's opponent D'Lo Brown went for a running powerbomb, and unfortunately Droz landed right on his head. The injury was so severe that Droz fractured 2 vertebrae in his neck. He was immediately rushed to hospital where he underwent hours of surgery to reduce and stabilize the pressure on his injured neck. Although he had emergency surgery, it would ultimately leave him as a quadriplegic with essentially no movement below the neck. Droz has no ill will whatsoever towards D'Lo, and the two actually remain friends to this very day. Speaking in a 2014 interview with Fox Sports, Droz would reveal, "I have no hard feelings towards D'Lo because shit happens, and everyone who gets involved in athletics, including WWE, knows the risks that exist." Number 8. Samoa Joe ends the career of Tyson Kidd. A dark match between Samoa Joe and Tyson Kidd in 2015 resulted in Kidd never wrestling again. Kidd would receive a muscle buster from Joe, which ultimately resulted in Kidd being paralyzed in the ring. Tyson Kidd would suffer a spinal cord concussion, which is one of the worst injuries an athlete can potentially suffer. In a 2018 interview with Slam Wrestling, Kidd would reveal, "I have a picture and I think my hands are in the wrong position compared to other ones I've seen. I wasn't able to run through it with him before the match. I drop, bang, and at the first I saw the light and I was like, ah man, and then my whole body went limp. It felt like it weighed 1,000,000 pounds. I was completely paralyzed. I was paralyzed from the neck down." Following the career-ending injury, Kidd has taken on a role as a backstage producer. Number 7. Kofi Kingston ends the career of CM Punk. One of the lesser talked about career-ending injuries relates to CM Punk and Kofi Kingston. At the 2014 Royal Rumble, Punk would suffer a concussion, and alongside other factors would ultimately lead him to deciding to leave the WWE the next night. The concussion occurred when Kofi entered the match. Kofi would hit a stiff clothesline on Punk, and this would be the move which would ultimately give Punk the career-ending concussion. The clip of Kofi clotheslining Punk was actually shown during Punk's lawsuit with WWE doctor Chris Amann. Although Kofi may have contributed to Punk retiring way before he was supposed to, the two appear to be on good terms and remain in contact. Number 6. Neville ends the career of Corey Graves.
I've had some bad luck and suffered a few concussions recently. So it's for that reason I'm here to officially announce my in-ring retirement.
Most fans associate Corey Graves for being the central color commentator for WWE programming. However, at one stage, Graves had a promising career in NXT and actually held the NXT tag team titles alongside Neville. Unfortunately for Graves, upon receiving a push to the top of NXT, he would receive multiple concussions in a particular match with Neville, which would ultimately force him to retire. Concussions can occur in wrestling at any time, and it wasn't directly Neville's fault that Graves was injured. Graves has never officially ruled out a return to the ring, however we do know the severity of long-term damage from concussions can be extremely complex, and Graves may be better suited as a commentator for his career. Number 5. Edge ends the career of Jose Estrada. Edge is one of the most decorated superstars to ever compete in the WWE. However, what most fans don't know is that Edge's debut match actually resulted in him accidentally injuring his opponent, and this opponent just so happened to retire shortly after. In Edge's debut match, he would go one-on-one with Jose Estrada, and in the match, Edge would hit a senton dive onto the outside. However, Edge's leg would awkwardly hit Estrada on the head, and this unfortunately broke his neck. The match was immediately stopped, and Estrada would unfortunately retire from in-ring competition following the incident. Number 4. Sting ends the career of Rick Rude. The last night in the legendary career of Rick Rude took place in 1994 against the Icon Sting. In the match, Sting would go for a dive, and Rude, instead of landing on the outside of the ring like normal, part of his back landed on a piece of elevated wood which surrounded the ring. This blew out Rude's C4 and C5 vertebrae and would ultimately force him to retire early. This was a terrible way for Rude to go out, and he was just 35 years old when he suffered the injury. Number 3. Owen Hart prematurely ends the career of Stone Cold Steve Austin. Perhaps the most well-known injury in WWE history took place at 1997 SummerSlam pay-per-view. Now, just before the match between Stone Cold Steve Austin and Owen Hart, Owen wanted to use a sit-out piledriver move on Austin. However, this neck break unfortunately forced Austin to undergo neck surgery in 1999 as well as take an early retirement in 2003. Austin's last official match would be against The Rock at WrestleMania 19 just 6 years later. Austin was one of the biggest stars of all time, and without his neck being broken in 97, he would have without a doubt had a longer career at the top of the card. Number 2. Edge ends the career of Christopher Nowinski. Christopher Nowinski is most well known for his groundbreaking work into concussion-related injuries in sport. Nowinski himself would be forced to retire in 2003 after he suffered a severe concussion at the 2003 Royal Rumble. In the Rumble match, Nowinski was supposed to take a double drop kick from Rey Mysterio and Edge, but sadly the timing was off, meaning that Edge landed on top of Nowinski's head. It looked absolutely brutal. Nowinski had a lot of potential in the ring, but his work in the field of concussions and, more importantly, CTE has certainly left Nowinski with an incredible legacy. And number 1, Goldberg ends the career of Bret Hart. A Bret Hart and Goldberg's match at 1999 Starrcade pay-per-view is one of the most infamous matches of all time. In the match, Goldberg would make full contact with a mule kick to Bret's head, which ultimately gave him a serious concussion. Bret wouldn't wrestle too many matches following the match and would be forced to retire in 2000. Bret would reveal on Stone Cold Steve Austin's podcast, "I always knew what I was doing. I would hurt myself before I ever hurt another wrestler. I just wish some of the wrestlers I worked with, especially at the end of my career like Goldberg. He was one of the most unprofessional wrestlers to ever work in the business. For Bill Goldberg to be in the Hall of Fame, he hurt everybody that he worked with, and even when I worked with Bill, I always think the last words I said to him before we went out and had that match where he injured me and ended my career, I said, 'Bill, whatever you do out there, don't hurt me. We can do whatever you want, we can do anything, just don't go nuts.'" But there you have it, folks, 10 WWE wrestlers who ended a wrestler's career. Be sure to leave your comments below, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.